Adesina's life changed the moment Naima stepped into their home. After her mother's death, she had hoped for peace, but instead, she got a nightmare wrapped in a smile. Naima, with her sweet words and fake kindness, won over Bago easily. She knew how to play the role of a loving wife while hiding her true intentions. Her real target was Adesina. The girl was too beautiful, too kind, too loved by the villagers, that made Naima sick with jealousy. What if Bago left everything to his daughter? What if Bago left everything to his daughter? What if she became more powerful than Naima ever could? She couldn't let that happen. Every day, Naima filled Bago's ears with poison. "She doesn't respect you," she whispered. "She's too proud, too stubborn. If you don't control her now, she'll bring shame to your name." Bago, blinded by grief and the warmth of a new wife, started to believe it. He stopped looking at Adesina with love. He started seeing her as a problem, and that was exactly what Naima wanted. Adesina's life became a living nightmare. From the moment she woke up until the moment she collapsed in exhaustion, she was nothing more than a servant in her own home. Naima made sure of that. She ordered Adesina to clean, cook, fetch water, and do every bit of hard labor, while her own daughter sat comfortably, eating the finest meals and wearing the best clothes. At first, Adesina thought her father would stop it. Surely, he would see how unfair it was. But Bago had changed. He barely looked at her anymore, and when he did, it was with cold, empty eyes. Naima had poisoned his mind so well that he now believed Adesina deserved this treatment. She must learn humility, Naima would say with a sweet smile, and Bago would nod in agreement. The food Adesina once enjoyed became a distant memory. While Naima and her daughter feasted on rich stews, sweet fruits, and warm bread, Adesina was given scraps. A half-eaten piece of yam, a few grains of rice, or a stale piece of bread was all she had. Some nights, she went to bed with nothing at all. Her stomach ached, but she refused to break. She wouldn't give Naima the satisfaction of seeing her beg. The villagers noticed. They saw the once lively, radiant girl now thin and tired, her hands rough from endless labor. Some pitied her, some wanted to help, but no one dared to speak against Naima. She was not just cruel, she was dangerous. There were whispers that she knew dark secrets, that crossing her would bring misfortune, and so they turned their heads, pretending not to see. But Adesina saw everything. She saw how easily people chose silence over justice. She saw how quickly love turned into indifference, and she saw the pure hatred in Naima's eyes every time she looked at her. This wasn't just about control. Naima wanted her gone, and if Adesina wasn't careful, she would be. Naima thought she had broken Adesina. She had turned her into a servant, taken away her comfort, and made her invisible in her own home. But no matter how much she tried to crush the girl, something about her refused to die. Adesina still carried herself with quiet dignity. Even with hunger in her belly and exhaustion in her bones, there was a light in her eyes that Naima couldn't stand. Then came the prophecy. One evening, as Naima walked through the marketplace, she overheard an old village woman speaking in hushed tones to a small crowd. "That girl, Adesina," the woman said, her voice filled with mystery. "She is destined for greatness. No suffering will destroy her. No enemy will defeat her. She will rise above them all." Naima's heart pounded in her chest. Destiny, greatness. No, that could not be. If Adesina rose, then Naima would fall. If the girl became powerful, she would take everything Naima had schemed for. Bako's wealth, the villagers' love, maybe even a royal favor one day. Naima clenched her fists. She would not allow it. That night, she made up her mind. Breaking Adesina was not enough. She had to get rid of her completely. But it had to be slow, unnoticeable. If the girl simply dropped dead, people would suspect something. No, she needed something clever, something that would make it look like Adesina had simply grown weaker over time until death finally claimed her. She knew exactly where to go. Deep in the village, past the crowded huts and market stalls, lived Akena, the healer. He was old and wise, known for his knowledge of herbs, potions, and remedies. But he also knew poisons. Naima arrived at his hut late at night, her eyes filled with false desperation. "My husband's daughter is ill," she lied. She is wasting away, but I don't want her to suffer. Please, give me something to ease her pain, to make her passing gentle. Adesina studied her for a long time. His eyes, sharp and knowing, seemed to look right into her soul. He saw the darkness in her heart, the wickedness behind her words. But he did not expose her. Instead, he nodded and handed her a small pouch filled with dark powder. A little each day, he said. It will make her weak, take her strength bit by bit, until there is nothing left. Naima's lips curled into a smile as she took the pouch. The next morning, she mixed the powder into Adesina's food. She watched eagerly as the girl ate, waiting for the signs to appear. Today, it would begin. Today, Adesina's fate was sealed, or so she thought. Naima watched Adesina closely, waiting for the poison to take effect. She had mixed it into her food with her own hands, ensuring the girl would grow weaker with every bite. It was only a matter of time before she became too frail to stand, too sick to fight back. Soon, she would waste away, and Naima would finally be free of her. But something strange happened. Days passed, and instead of growing weaker, Adesina became stronger. Her once tired eyes now burned with a quiet fire. Her thin frame, once weakened by hunger and exhaustion, filled out with energy. Her skin, which had lost its glow under Naima's cruelty, now looked radiant, almost as if touched by the gods themselves. She moved with new strength, her steps lighter, her spirit unshaken. Naima couldn't believe it. This was impossible. The poison was meant to drain her life, not restore it. She increased the dosage, adding more powder to Adesina's meals, determined to break her. But the more she fed her, the stronger Adesina became. Her body thrived, her energy soared. The villagers, who once pitied her, now whispered in amazement. She looks different, they murmured. Something is happening to her. And indeed, something was. What Naima didn't know was that the poison she had so carefully obtained was no poison at all. Ikena, the healer, had seen through her lies. He had looked into her eyes and recognized the greed, the jealousy, the darkness that consumed her soul. And so, he had given her something else. The powder she had so eagerly used to destroy Adesina was in reality an ancient strengthening tonic, one that revived the body, sharpened the mind, and awakened the spirit. Instead of killing Adesina, it was unlocking something within her. Naima's panic grew with each passing day. She had planned for Adesina's slow, painful downfall, but now it was as if the girl had been reborn. She was no longer the weak, overworked child Naima had controlled for so long. She was something else, now, something stronger, something untouchable. And for the first time, Naima felt fear. Naima could barely contain her frustration. Every day, she watched Adesina, expecting her to grow weaker, expecting the poison to do its work. But instead, the girl flourished. Her once tired limbs were now strong. Her dull eyes now burned with life. Her skin glowed with an almost supernatural radiance. It was as if the suffering of the past had been washed away, replaced by something more powerful than before. This wasn't supposed to happen. Naima had been so careful, so precise. She had mixed the powder into Adesina's food herself, ensuring that each meal would bring her closer to death. But the opposite was happening. The more she gave her, the stronger she became. It was as if the poison was feeding her, empowering her. It made no sense. Desperation clawed at Naima's throat. She couldn't let this continue. She had to act fast before people started noticing. But they already had. The villagers whispered whenever Adesina passed by. They had seen her struggle for years, suffering under Naima's rule. But now, she was different. They could see it in her posture, the way she carried herself. It was as if an invisible force had lifted her from the shadows. She looks blessed, one old woman murmured to another. Maybe the gods have taken pity on her. Another whispered. Or maybe she was meant for something greater, an elder said, nodding thoughtfully. The rumors spread quickly. Some believed Adesina had been touched by the spirits, given strength beyond human limits. Others thought she had unlocked a hidden power, a destiny too strong for even Naima's cruelty to break. Naima heard the whispers, and they sent chills down her spine. She had spent years making sure Adesina remained beneath her, invisible and powerless. But now, people were looking at her with awe, with admiration. They no longer saw a helpless girl. They saw something greater, and that was dangerous. Fueled by fear and rage, Naima did the only thing she could think of. She doubled the dosage, then tripled it. She poured the powder into Adesina's meals in desperate amounts, hoping, praying that it would finally work. But it was useless. Adesina continued to thrive. If anything, she was growing even stronger, her mind sharper, her presence commanding. She no longer avoided Naima's gaze. She no longer cowered in the shadows. Instead, she looked straight into her stepmother's eyes, as if she knew everything, as if she saw right through her. For the first time, Naima felt truly powerless. The girl she had tried to destroy was no longer just surviving, she was rising. And deep down, Naima knew that it was only a matter of time before everything she had built, every lie she had told, came crashing down.
Naima was running out of time. No matter how much poison she fed Adesina, the girl only grew stronger, and the villagers were beginning to notice. Whispers of blessings, fate, and hidden power spread like wildfire. If Naima didn't act soon, she would lose control forever. She needed a new plan, one so cruel, so convincing, that even Adesina wouldn't be able to escape. That night, as the village slept, Naima crept into the forest, carrying with her the tools of deception. She gathered dried bones, strange herbs, and symbols carved into wood, things that would make the villagers believe dark magic was at play. She carefully arranged them beneath Adesina's sleeping mat, hiding them just well enough that they would be discovered later. Then, she smeared ashes and strange markings around the hut, ensuring the scene looked disturbing enough to spark fear. At dawn, she screamed. "Witchcraft!" she shrieked, running out of the hut with wild eyes. "Evil! Darkness has entered our home!" Villagers rushed to see what the commotion was about. Naima dragged them inside, pointing at the eerie objects she had planted. Gasps filled the air. Murmurs spread like wildfire. "Adesina has been using dark magic!" Naima cried, her voice trembling with perfectly rehearsed fear. How else could she have survived? How else could she have grown so strong after all she suffered? This is not a blessing. It is sorcery. Adesina, just waking up, stared in shock as her home was turned against her. "This is a lie," she said firmly, standing her ground. "I have done nothing wrong." But doubt had already infected the crowd. The villagers had always loved Adesina, but fear was a powerful thing, and Naima knew exactly how to use it. "She fooled us all," Naima continued, tears streaming down her face. "I took her in as my own, and this is how she repays me. Look at these bones. Look at these symbols. She has been hiding her true nature all along." The villagers hesitated. They had seen Adesina's kindness, her hard work, her suffering, but they had also seen her transformation, how she had gone from weak to strong, from broken to powerful. It didn't make sense. And when things didn't make sense, people turned to superstition. An elder stepped forward, looking between Adesina and the planted evidence. "Child, can you explain this?" "I do not need to explain what I did not do," Adesina replied, her voice steady. "I am no witch." But the seed of doubt had been planted. Murmurs grew louder. Some defended her, saying she had always been good, that she would never harm anyone. Others, poisoned by fear, began to question everything they knew. Naima watched, satisfied. This was it. If the village turned against Adesina, she would be powerless. She would be cast out, feared, and maybe even punished. This was the end of her story. But what Naima didn't know was that the real truth was about to be revealed by someone she never expected. The tension in the village square was suffocating. Villagers surrounded Adesina, torn between fear and loyalty. Naima stood at the center, eyes glistening with false tears, feeding the flames of doubt. "She fooled us all," she cried. "Her strength is unnatural. She has used dark magic against us." Adesina stood tall, her heart pounding, but her voice unwavering. "I have done nothing but survive. If that is a crime, then judge me for it." But fear had already infected the crowd. Then, from the shadows, a voice rang out. "Enough of this nonsense." The villagers turned, and there stood Ikenna, the village healer, his piercing eyes locking onto Naima. He walked forward with slow, deliberate steps, the weight of truth in his stride. "I have remained silent for too long, but no more. he declared. Naima stiffened. What are you talking about, healer? She snapped, her voice laced with sudden unease. Ikenna ignored her and turned to the villagers. You believe Adesina's strength is unnatural, that she has used dark forces? He shook his head. She is not the one who played with potions and deceit. It was Naima who sought darkness. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Naima's face twisted with panic. Lies, she spat. You are bewitched, just like her. Ikenna chuckled, a dark amusement flickering in his eyes. Bewitched? No, Naima. I am the one you came to when you sought to poison Adesina. The air grew thick with shock. The villagers turned their wide-eyed gazes to Naima. You begged me for a poison that would make her weak, that would drain her life slowly, so no one would suspect. But I saw the wickedness in your heart, and I could not let you succeed. Murmurs broke out. Some villagers took a step back from Naima, their trust in her shattering. Adesina stared at Ikenna, realization dawning upon her. Naima shook her head violently. He's lying. Ikenna silenced her with a raised hand. I gave you a potion, yes, but it was not poison. It was an ancient strengthening elixir, meant to fortify the body against illness and harm. The very thing you thought would kill her only made her stronger. He turned to the crowd. Adesina did not use dark magic. She survived because fate was on her side. The spirits protected her from Naima's evil. The weight of his words crushed the last of the villagers' doubts. Their fear turned into rage. Naima, who had controlled them with whispers and deceit, was now exposed. You tried to kill her. An elder's voice trembled with fury. You fed her poison. Another woman gasped, clutching her chest. The tide had turned. The same people who had feared Adesina now stood in defense of her. They stepped away from Naima as if she carried disease. Naima's breath came in ragged gasps. Her lies were crumbling around her, leaving her exposed. I only did what was best for this village, she tried to plead. She is a threat. But no one believed her anymore. Furious glares bore into her, and the crowd closed in. For years, she had tormented Adesina, twisted Bako's love, and ruled with cruelty. And now, she was alone. She must be punished, someone shouted. Let the spirits decide her fate, another voice called. Naima backed away, but there was nowhere to run. The truth had caught up to her, and there was no escape. The villagers surrounded Naima, their eyes filled with fury. The truth had been exposed. She was a liar, a manipulator, and a murderer at heart. There was nowhere left to run, but she refused to accept defeat. Her chest rose and fell with panicked breaths as she took slow steps backward. You don't understand, she shrieked. Everything I did was for the good of this family, for this village. But her words fell on deaf ears. The people who once feared her now saw her for what she truly was. A venomous snake. Someone threw a rock at her feet and she stumbled, nearly falling. The spirits will decide her fate, an elder declared, his voice firm and final. Naima's face twisted with horror. No, you can't. But it was too late. The villagers, moving as one, forced her back, step by step, toward the edge of the village, where the trees thickened and the air grew heavy with an eerie silence. The forbidden river lay just beyond, a place whispered about in fear and reverence. No one dared go near it unless fate had already sealed their doom. The legend spoke of its waters as something unnatural, something alive. It was said to punish those with evil hearts, swallowing them whole, leaving no trace behind. Naima's feet hit damp soil. She turned, realizing where she was, and terror filled her eyes. Wait, please, she sobbed. But the villagers did not move. They only watched, their anger now replaced with a cold judgment. A sharp crack of thunder rumbled overhead, as if the heavens themselves were delivering a warning. The ground beneath her feet was slick with moisture, and as she took another frantic step back, her foot slipped. Her arms flailed, grasping at nothing, and in one horrifying instant, she tumbled backward into the river. The moment her body hit the water, the surface erupted. The river, which had been calm only seconds ago, churned violently as if it had been awakened. Naima screamed, but the sound was swallowed by the crashing waves. The villagers gasped, stepping back in fear. The water wrapped around her like living hands, pulling her under. She fought, kicking and thrashing, but it was useless. The river had chosen. Foam bubbled at the surface, and for a brief moment, her hand reached out, fingers stretching in a desperate plea. Then, silence. The water stilled. Naima was gone. A deep, eerie hush settled over the crowd. No one moved. No one spoke. It was over. The river had delivered its judgment. Bako stood frozen, his face pale, his eyes wide with disbelief. His wife, the woman he had trusted, the woman he had chosen over his own daughter, was gone. He dropped to his knees, the weight of his actions crashing down on him. His shoulders shook, and for the first time in years, he looked at Adesina with clear eyes, not clouded by Naima's deceit. Tears streamed down his face. "My daughter, what have I done?" His voice cracked with regret, raw and broken. He crawled toward her, his hands trembling. "Forgive me," he whispered. "Please, Adesina. I was blind. I let her turn me against you. I failed you." Adesina stared at him, her heart torn. This was the father she had loved, the father who had once held her in his arms and told her she was his world. But he had abandoned her when she needed him most. The scars of his betrayal ran deep. She took a slow breath, the weight of the moment pressing down on her. "I do not hate you, father," she said softly. "But forgiveness is not words. It is earned." Bako nodded, his tears falling freely. He knew he could never undo the past, but he would spend the rest of his life trying to make it right. The morning sun bathed the village of Manzaya in golden light, marking the beginning of a new era. The fear that had once lingered in the air was gone. The people walked with pride, no longer under the shadow of Naima's cruelty, and at the heart of it all was Adesina, standing tall, her presence a symbol of resilience and justice. Word of her survival had spread far beyond the village. The story of the girl who had been poisoned yet grew stronger, the girl who had endured torment but never broke, had reached the great kingdom of Tumbari. It was said that Prince Chibuzo himself had heard of her trials and wanted to meet her. One day, as Adesina walked through the village, speaking with elders and helping children, a royal messenger arrived. He carried a sealed letter bearing the crest of Tumbari. The village gathered as the elder unrolled the parchment and read aloud. "Prince Chibuzo invites Adesina of Manzaya to the royal court of Tumbari. He wishes to honor her strength, her wisdom, and her survival." Gasps filled the air. No one from Manzaya had ever been summoned to Tumbari's royal court. It was the highest honor imaginable. Bako, still humbled by his past mistakes, stepped forward. "This is your destiny, my daughter. You have always been meant for greatness." Adesina looked at the people around her, the same villagers who had once feared speaking up for her, yet now stood in awe of her strength. She saw the children watching her with wide, hopeful eyes. She saw the women standing taller, inspired by what she had overcome. She nodded. "I will go, but I will return. This village is my home." The journey to Tumbari was unlike anything she had ever imagined. The roads were lined with traders selling silk, spices, and rare jewels. Towering gates welcomed her into a city that pulsed with life and power. Inside the grand palace, she met Prince Chibuzo. He was not the arrogant ruler she had expected, but a noble man with sharp eyes and a curious mind. "You have endured what many would not survive," he said, studying her. "You were poisoned, yet you thrived. You were betrayed, yet you stood strong. I want to hear your story from your own lips." And so, she told him everything, the pain, the fear, the moment she realized that evil destroys itself. When she finished, the court was silent. Then, the prince smiled. "You are a woman of rare strength, Adesina. The world needs more like you." He offered her a place among his advisors, but Adesina knew where she belonged. "Thank you, my prince, but my village needs me. There are children who suffer as I did. I will not let them grow up in fear." Chibuzo nodded, respect gleaming in his eyes. "Then go, and build a future where no child knows the pain you endured." When she returned, the people of Manzaya celebrated her. She did not take her father's wealth, nor did she seek revenge on those who had turned their backs on her. Instead, she built a future. She started a school where girls and boys learned to read, write, and speak with confidence. No child would be treated as she had been. She helped women learn skills so they could stand on their own. She ensured no one was left hungry. Under her leadership, Manzaya flourished. No longer was it just a village hidden in the forests. It became known as a place of strength and wisdom. Travelers came to hear Adesina's story, to learn from the girl who had survived. Years passed, and Adesina grew into a woman of legend. One day, a young girl asked her, "How did you survive, even when everyone was against you?" Adesina smiled, her eyes filled with the wisdom of years, because evil always destroys itself, and a heart meant for greatness cannot be poisoned. The years had passed like whispers in the wind, Yet the memory of Adesina's survival remained as strong as the roots of the oldest tree in Manzaya. She was no longer the fragile girl forced to endure suffering at the hands of a cruel stepmother. She had become a leader, a protector, a force that no one could break. Under her guidance, Manzaya had flourished. No longer did children cower in fear, nor did women live under the shadows of oppression. Education, prosperity, and justice had replaced the silence that once allowed cruelty to thrive. People from distant lands came to see the village that had once been hidden in suffering, but now shined with strength. And at the heart of it all was Adesina, standing tall, unshaken, unbroken. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting golden hues over the village, a young girl approached her. Her eyes were filled with curiosity, a spark of wonder dancing within them. "Is it true?" she asked. "Did your own stepmother try to poison you?" Adesina looked at the girl and smiled, a knowing, almost amused smile. "Yes," she said simply. The child hesitated before asking the question that had lingered in the hearts of many. "How did you survive?" Adesina let out a soft laugh, the kind that carried no bitterness, only wisdom. "Because evil destroys itself," she said. "It always does." The words settled in the air like an unshakable truth. The girl listened, her small hands clenched with admiration. "But weren't you afraid?" Adesina's gaze drifted to the horizon, where the last rays of sunlight met the earth. "Fear only has power if you bow to it. My stepmother thought she could break me. She thought poisoning my body would weaken my soul. But she didn't realize, some hearts are meant for greatness. No poison, no betrayal, no cruelty can destroy them." The girl stood in silence, absorbing the weight of those words. Adesina placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Remember this, little one. The world will test you. People will try to bring you down, but they can only win if you let them. Stand tall, no matter what. That is the lesson life has taught me." As she walked away, the villagers watched her with admiration, as they always did. Some had once feared speaking up for her, afraid of Naima's wrath. Others had pitied her, believing she would not survive. Now, they looked at her with respect, knowing she had endured what many could not. Legends of Adesina's journey spread far beyond Manzaya. Travelers carried her story to distant lands, telling of the girl who had been poisoned but only grew stronger, the woman who had been betrayed but never lost her soul, the survivor who turned her suffering into strength. One day, an elder from a neighboring village came to see her. He had heard the stories and wished to understand the truth for himself. As they sat under the shade of a great tree, he asked, "If you could change your past, would you?" Adesina looked at him, her expression calm and unwavering. "No," she said. "Every pain, every betrayal, every hardship shaped me into the woman I am today. Without them, I would not have known my own strength." The elder nodded, his face etched with understanding. "Then tell me, what is the greatest lesson you have learned?" Adesina thought for a moment, then spoke with quiet certainty. "That no matter how much evil tries to destroy you, it will always collapse under its own weight. And when it does, you must be ready, not for revenge, but for victory." The elder smiled. A wise lesson, indeed. As the years passed, Adesina's name became a symbol of resilience. Her story was told to children who needed courage, to women who sought strength, to men who wished to understand true power. And through it all, she remained the same, calm, unshaken, standing tall like a mountain that had weathered every storm. One day, as she walked through her village, watching the children laugh and the people thrive, she knew in her heart she had won, not by seeking vengeance, not by dwelling on her suffering, but by rising above it all. And so, when someone asked about her past, about the pain she had endured, she simply smiled. "Evil destroys itself," she said, turning away with the confidence of a survivor. For no poison could destroy a heart meant for greatness. Some hearts are meant for greatness. No poison, no betrayal, no cruelty can break them. If Adesina's story inspired you, show your support by liking and subscribing. Remember, true strength isn't in revenge. It's in rising above.